Peace and love, it's your boy Don Kalam, and welcome to Dream Keepers Radio, that private life podcast. You're here, tuned in with your boy, and this is brought to you by Follow the Yellow Brick Road by Don Kalam. Search the book on Amazon now. Go get the book and uncover the matrix and how the United States is operating in the financial marketplace. Much peace and love.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're looking at this whole unplugging from the matrix concept.
Sounds a little out there, right?
I know.
Unplugging from the matrix.
Yeah, but specifically how it's presented by this guy Don Kalam on his Dream Keepers Radio podcast.
Right, so we're talking about like this alternative perspective on law and finance and personal sovereignty.
Exactly. Like even how to manage your own finances outside of like the regular banking system.
That's a big one for him, yeah.
And he gets into some pretty interesting legal stuff too.
He does.
Like historical stuff that, I'd never even heard of before.
Right, like a lot of this stuff, it's like almost hidden history.
Yeah. Like he talks about the importance of using all capitis in legal documents.
Oh yeah, and like how that's connected to this ancient Roman legal term.
Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
Right, exactly.
It's like something out of a Harry Potter spell.
But he claims it has like real legal implications today.
And then there's this whole thing about the letter rogatory.
Yeah, that one's fascinating.
Like he claims that courts are actually operating as for-profit corporations.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. But, we're here to sort of like unpack all of this.
To separate the fact from the fiction,
Exactly. So let's start with like, who is Don Kalam for people who haven't heard of him?
Well, he's this kind of like radio personality, you could say.
Yeah, like a talk show host, but...
Right, but his focus is very much on these sort of like fringe ideas.
Yeah, alternative perspective.
Well, finance government.
Right? It's all about like individual freedom and taking back control.
That's the core of it.
Yeah, so when he talks about unplugging from the matrix, what does he actually mean?
Well, it's like a metaphor,
Okay.
He's talking about separating yourself from systems of control.
Like the systems that we kind of take for granted.
The ones we're all plugged into without even realizing it.
Right, like the legal system, the financial system.
Exactly. And for him, it's all about like reclaiming your individual power and autonomy.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you unplug?
Well, that's where it gets a little complicated.
I bet.
He's got some very specific ideas about how to do that.
Like legally how to separate yourself.
Right. He talks about like, becoming a private citizen, American national.
I've heard that term before, but I don't really understand what it means.
Yeah, it's a bit of a legal gray area.
So is it like you're renouncing your citizenship or something?
No, not exactly.
Yeah.
He claims it's more about like reclaiming your original sovereignty.
Okay, so it's like you're still American, but you're operating under a different set of rules.
That's the general idea.
This is really interesting, but I'm already kind of confused.
Yeah, I know it's a lot to take in.
But let's try to break it down a little bit.
Sure.
So one of the things Don Kalam talks about is this idea that a person is basically a corporation.
Right. The straw man theory.
The straw man.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
I think so, but remind me.
So the idea is that like when you're born, the government creates this like separate legal entity. Yeah, using your name, but in all cap yes.
So like my birth certificate has my name in all cap yes.
Right. And that's supposedly like the name of this corporate entity.
Okay, so wait, they're saying there's like two of me?
In a legal sense, yeah.
There's like the real me.
And then there's this like corporate straw man version of you.
And that's who the government actually interacts with.
That's what they claim.
This is blowing my mind.
And they say this straw man is used as collateral for government debt.
What?
Yeah, like because the U.S. is a bankrupt country.
Because of fiat currency.
Exactly. Because the dollar isn't backed by anything tangible.
So they need something to use as collateral.
And they claim that's where the straw man comes in.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that before.
It's a pretty wild theory, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I buy it, but it's definitely interesting.
I think that's the point,
To get us thinking.
Exactly, to challenge our assumptions about how these systems work.
So, okay, we've got this straw man idea.
And then there's the whole thing about all capitis being connected to this ancient Roman legal concept.
Right, Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
Which Don Kalam pulls straight from Black's Law Dictionary, by the way.
So it's a real legal term.
Oh yeah, it's in there.
But what does it actually mean?
Well, it basically means diminishing of status.
Diminishing of status.
Yeah, like in Roman law, there were different levels of legal status.
Okay.
And the most severe level was called Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
And that meant like you lost all your rights.
Pretty much.
Like becoming a slave.
Exactly. You were no longer considered a person under the law.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, and Don Kalam suggests that writing a person's name in all capitis,
like on a legal document,
represents this Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
So he's saying that by using all capitis, the government is basically treating us like slaves.
That's his interpretation.
That's a pretty extreme interpretation.
It is. But, he's trying to make a point
about how this system is rigged against it.
How we've lost our sovereignty.
Okay. I'm starting to see where he's coming from.
But again, it's a very specific interpretation of this legal concept.
And it's probably not one that most legal scholars would agree with.
Right. It's definitely on the fringe.
But it's thought-provoking, for sure.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Okay, so we've got the straw man.
We've got the Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
And then there's this letter rogatory that Don Kalam keeps talking about.
Ah, yes, the letter rogatory.
Which is apparently a real document.
Oh, yeah, it's a real thing.
And people actually use it in court cases.
Some people do.
But it makes some pretty wild claims about how courts operate.
It does.
Like what kind of claim?
Well, for example, it claims that courts are actually for-profit corporations.
So they're not really there to uphold justice.
According to the letter rogatory, no.
They're just businesses looking to make money.
That's the claim.
And how do they do that?
Well, it suggests that they're securitizing cases.
Securitizing.
Like turning them into financial instruments.
Wait, so they're making money off of our legal troubles?
That's what the letter rogatory alleges.
That's crazy. And it also mentions a connection between the courts and the IMF.
Right, this whole idea of like a global financial conspiracy.
So it's basically saying that the entire legal system is corrupt.
That's the gist of it.
This is making me kind of paranoid.
I know it can be a bit unsettling.
So is the letter rogatory like a legitimate legal strategy? It's hard to say. I mean, some people use it.
They do.
But I'm guessing most lawyers would probably advise against it.
I would imagine so.
Because it's based on these like fringe interpretations of the law.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this whole straw man thing.
The Capitis Diminutio Maxima.
The letter rogatory.
And this idea of becoming a private citizen to somehow escape it all.
Am I getting that right?
You've got the key players for sure.
It's a lot to take in.
And to be honest, some of it sounds pretty far-fetched.
I know, right? It's like a conspiracy theory buffet.
But I think what's important here is that Don Kalam's ideas get people thinking critically about the systems they're a part of.
That's true.
Even if you don't agree with everything he says.
He's making us question things.
And maybe do a little research of our own.
Right. Like, is there any truth to this straw man theory?
What about this Capitis Diminutio Maxima thing?
Is the letter rogatory a valid legal strategy?
These are all questions worth exploring.
Okay, so we've laid out some of the core concepts from Don Kalam and this whole unplugging from the matrix idea.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's important to look at some specific examples of what Don Kalam suggests people actually do to unplug.
Right, like what are the practical steps he recommends?
Because he gives some pretty specific instructions.
He does.
And I think understanding those will help us evaluate how practical and potentially risky his advice might be.
Exactly. So let's dive into that.
Sounds good.
So let's say you're really intrigued by this whole unplugging thing.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I want to try this out.
Right, you're ready to unplug from the matrix.
What do you actually do?
Well, Don Kalam, he gives some pretty specific instructions.
Does he really?
Oh, yeah.
Like what kind of instructions?
Like how to interact with legal documents and government officials using particular phrases and legal jargon.
Like magic words?
Kinda.
Interesting.
He's really big on sending these very formal sounding letters.
Oh, I've heard about those.
Yeah, like affidavits and notices.
They're a big part of this whole private citizen thing, right?
Exactly.
It's like you're putting the government on notice.
That you're operating under a different set of rules.
Okay, so what are some examples of things he tells people to do?
Well, one of the most common ones is refusing to use zip codes on mail.
Really?
Yeah.
Zip codes.
He argues that zip codes are like a tool for the government to track and control you.
Okay.
Like it links you to that straw man entity.
So by not using a zip code, you're like breaking that connection.
That's the idea.
Does it actually work, though?
Well,
That's debatable.
I mean, does the mail still get delivered? It might. It might not. It might not. The Postal Service might have trouble delivering it.
Okay. But legally speaking, does it actually do anything?
I mean, there's no legal basis for this idea that zip codes somehow bind you to the straw man.
Or that by not using them, you suddenly have like special legal status.
Right.
So it's more like a symbolic gesture.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
It seems like a lot of Don Kalam's advice is like that.
Kind of like walking this fine line between like unconventional legal strategies.
And what some people might call conspiracy theories.
Right.
It's a tricky balance.
And to be fair, a lot of his followers genuinely believe they're like reclaiming their freedom.
And exposing these like hidden truths about the legal system.
Yeah, they really see it as like waking up from the matrix.
And it's easy to see how these ideas could be appealing.
Especially to people who feel like disillusioned or powerless.
Like the system isn't working for them.
Exactly. And, you know, Don Kalam is a charismatic speaker.
Oh, yeah.
He presents these complex ideas in a way that's like captivating and seemingly empowering.
He makes it sound like there's a simple solution.
Yeah, like a secret formula to break free.
But as we've discussed, there's a real risk in taking these ideas at face value.
And acting on them without really understanding the law.
Right, because you could end up in a situation where you think you're making this like clever legal maneuver.
But you're actually just creating a mess for yourself.
Yeah, it's like trying to fix your own plumbing based on a YouTube video.
You might think you know what you're doing.
But you could end up flooding your house.
Exactly.
And when it comes to the legal system, the consequences could be far more serious than a flooded basement.
That's for sure.
So I guess the question is, what's the takeaway here?
Should people just ignore everything Don Kalam says?
And just stick with the conventional system?
I don't think it's about ignoring his ideas altogether.
Okay.
I think what's valuable is that he encourages critical thinking.
That's true.
And he gets people questioning the systems we often take for granted.
Like, why are things the way they are? So it's not necessarily about believing everything he says.
Right.
But more about using his ideas as a springboard.
For further research.
And understanding.
Like maybe listening to him sparks your curiosity about certain legal concepts.
Makes you question how the financial system really works.
That's a good thing.
It prompts you to learn more.
Do your own research.
Form your own conclusions.
Exactly.
So in a way, Don Kalam is acting as a catalyst.
For people to become more informed and engaged citizens.
Even if they don't agree with everything he says.
That's a great way to put it.
He's stirring the pot.
Getting people to think outside the box.
And hopefully motivating them to become more active participants in shaping their own lives.
That's the goal.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
It's not about literally unplugging from society.
Or becoming some kind of legal outlaw.
Right.
It's more about developing a critical awareness.
Of the systems we're a part of.
And making informed choices about how we want to interact with them.
So it's about empowerment.
But through knowledge.
Not through some secret legal loophole.
Exactly.
And that's a much more sustainable and realistic approach.
It is.
So if someone's really intrigued by these ideas and they want to learn more.
Where should they start?
That's a good question.
I think the key is to approach this with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
And to diversify your sources of information.
Don't just rely on one person's interpretation.
Even if they sound really convincing.
So read up on the legal concepts Don Kalam mentions.
Research the letter rogatory.
Maybe even consult with a legal professional.
To get a more grounded perspective.
Yeah, like a reality check.
Exactly.
And remember, critical thinking is your best tool in navigating this kind of information.
It's essential.
This has been really insightful.
We've unpacked a lot here.
I feel like I have a better understanding of what Don Kalam is all about.
I think so too.
But I also have a lot more questions.
And that's a good thing. It means you're thinking critically.
So as we wrap up this deep dive.
What's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think for me, the big takeaway is like, approach this whole unplugging from the matrix idea with a critical but open mind.
Okay.
You know, Don Kalam raises some interesting points, even if his interpretations are a bit unconventional.
Yeah, definitely not mainstream thinking.
But that's what makes it so thought-provoking, right?
It is.
It's about sparking curiosity, encouraging research, and ultimately empowering yourself with knowledge.
So don't just take everything at face value.
Right.
Dig deeper, explore different perspectives.
And form your own conclusions.
And I think it's important to add that if you're considering any of the specific actions Don Kalam suggests.
Like refusing to use zip codes or sending those legal notices?
Right. It's crucial to consult with qualified legal and financial professionals.
They can provide a more grounded perspective and help you avoid any potential pitfalls.
Yeah, it's like having a guide when you're venturing into unfamiliar territory.
You might be adventurous and want to explore, but it's always wise to have someone who knows the lay of the land. That's a great analogy.
And ultimately, I think that's what this whole deep dive boils down to.
Becoming more aware,
More informed.
and more engaged in shaping your own life.
That's it.
Beautifully said so. As we resurface from this deep dive into Don Kalam's Unplugging from the Matrix ideas, the question remains.
What does it all mean for you?
Does it spark a desire to learn more about the legal and financial systems?
Does it challenge your assumptions about how those systems work?
Maybe it even motivates you to take a more active role in shaping your own relationship with those systems.
Whatever your takeaway, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
That's the perfect note to end on. This deep dive is just the beginning of your journey.
Keep diving.
Keep discovering.
And keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
Until next time, happy exploring.
In a world where the tax system can seem overwhelming, one book is here to guide you towards financial empowerment. Introducing The Capitalizing Namepreneur, Unleashing the Power of Tax Credits by best-selling author Don Kalam. Are you looking to demystify the complexities of taxes and harness the power of tax credits? The Capitalizing Namepreneur provides an understanding of effectively utilizing your tax credits. Discover the secrets behind setting up a tax firm, understanding the strawman name, protecting your assets, and navigating the implications of the Social Security Trust Fund. Don Kalam's expertise shines through every page. It's like having a personal financial advisor by your side. Get your copy of The Capitalizing Namepreneur today and unlock the power of tax credits to enhance your financial well-being. Order your copy now and take control of your tax strategies. The Capitalizing Namepreneur, Unleashing the Power of Tax Credits by Don Kalam. Available now at leading bookstores and online. Get your copy today.